Howdy, let's talk about the basics of HTML today and everything you're going to want to know going into your very first HTML project. We have to ask, what is HTML? Well, HTML is the fundamental formatting language for pretty much every website you've been to. On the front end, it shows the users the website itself and how you want it to look. On the back side, it feeds metadata to the search engine itself to help optimize to find the right people to get to your website. For our example today, I'm going to be using freecodecamp.org's first project in their HTML curriculum. And if you like this video, I highly recommend that you go and do that itself and get your hands on this project and begin to program. Get your fingers down on the keyboard there. So let's talk about what formats HTML on the programming side. Well, HTML is made of tags. Those tags are embedded with elements that are then modified by attributes. Those are the three most basic things. You've got tags, elements, attributes down the line in that direction. Here we can see all three of them in our very first HTML tag. We have HTML itself, which is the main website that's going to be displayed. We have the attribute language equals English. That's just saying our website is going to be in English today. Following that, we have our head. You can see these are actually only going from line 4 to line 7. The reason is because one, anything in your head is not going to be displayed onto the website itself. While this title says Cat Photo App, our actual title here starts at H1, our first header. Why is that? Well, it's because this title is fed to the search engine, so if people Google Cat Photo App, it knows to look for your website here. Next is going to be our body. Our body is where all the action is going to be taking place inside of this website, followed by main. You have a footer at the end that is slightly different, and we'll get down to that in a minute, but you're going to go body and then you're going to go main. Main is where you want the majority of your action to be happening. As far as the tags go, you may also notice that body is nested a tab away from the edge, and that main is nested another tab away from the edge. This is standard programming formatting. This makes it much easier to read, but does not itself have an actual function. Next, let's look at the most common elements that you're going to be using. H1. What is H1? This is header 1. This is your most important header. It's your first one. Goes H1 through H6. As long as your header is nested, you cannot reuse that header. But if it's nested deep enough, you can. So if you notice this section has H2 and the next section also has H2, that's going to be allowed to be used. Now, why do you break these things up into different sections? Well, we want our different sections to be grouped by theme. Our first theme is cat photos. Our second theme is cat lists. You know, what do cats love? What do cats hate? And our last one is our cat form. You know, what information can we collect about your cat? Now, these different sections each have been nested inside of main. And the reason for that is because they don't really need to be that distinct outside of on the programming side where we're going to be reading it. Now let's talk about the next thing here on the list. We have, what is this? Well, that's a comment. A comment in code is code that actually does not get read by the compiler when it runs your code. Rather, this is to help make the code more readable, not only to yourself, but to anyone who looks at it in the future. Formatting your code correctly, there's going to be some personal taste to it, but it's very important that you try and follow the standard as best you can. So that way, when someone else comes along and they got to read your code, it's not like reading gibberish. Next list, you can see here, we have a paragraph. Less than, P greater than. That opens up our paragraph. A paragraph is just a place for text, nothing too crazy. The more interesting thing we have here is actually A, the anchor. If you notice, we open the anchor, A here, target equals blank, href, that is our hyperlink reference, is our catphotoapp.com and cat photos, and we close the anchor. So we can see this code here actually appears right here. So we've nested our A anchor within our paragraph here. And the reason we do that is because we want people to be able to click this hyperlink along the way. Then we finish out, we have another anchor down here, and that's actually attached to an image element. So the image element is anchored inside, or is nested inside the anchor element. What this does, basically is our reference now is stapled onto our image with its image source selected here. So now if we were to click on this image, it would take us to our freephotoapp.com link. It's very useful. You can see many different reasons you want to do that. Whereas here I can select this one. If I go down to lasagna, I can't click that one because I have not linked a hyperlink reference to it in any way. Next, let's look at what we can do with our lists here. So we have header 2 and header 3. Header 2 is cat list. You notice this font is slightly bigger than the next font thing cats love, but both of these are always going to be bolded. Your header's always going to be bolded. It's just important for you to know which one is the most important. You want your more important words to be on a header like H1. Cat photo app, our very first header, that denotes the entire thing on this list here. But you see this is UL, that is an unordered list. What that means is that it's going to show up as bullet points rather than as numbers like we see down here with our ordered list. And then in the unordered list, we can then nest line items, catnip, laser pointers, lasagnas, and these automatically format onto the page as an unordered list. In some instances, it may actually show up in a different order. Now, notice as well, our image we've decided to put inside of a figure element. Well, why did we do that? Well, it separates it not only from our other two lists, but on top of that, it allows us to add a figure caption. Figure caption, cats love lasagna, which is very true as we all know. You all may also notice around love is EM. So less than, EM greater than, love, less than / EM greater than. Why did we do that? It's because we want love to be italicized over here. We wanted to make sure that you know that cats love lasagna. You can do these things for pretty much all of the text that you display. We're also going to see further down, we have strong. Strong bolds, EM is going to italicize. You can always look these up to get different ways that you want your writings to be formatted. As we continue down the list, the next most interesting thing that we're going to have is the cat form itself here. So how did we do that? Well, we stuck it in its own section, header 2 cat form. So that means header 2, once again, we're going to have slightly larger formatting there. Well, it's still going to be bolded. Now we have a form. The form with the action itself being freecatphotoapp.com and submitting the app. That way, when people submit it, as we see down here, it actually goes somewhere. Now, what do we have to select from? We have, is your cat an indoor cat or an outdoor cat? How did we set that up? Well, we used a field set. So a field set, we're going to nest inside there. The first thing we're going to nest is the legend. The legend's going to appear here at the top. It's going to tell people what is being asked of them on this form. The next thing we're going to have is the labels that you can actually put inside of that form and what format they should take. In this case, we have radio buttons. That is just the circular buttons that you can click, and it decides to click one or the other. And the way we did that was we gave them different IDs, but we gave them the same type and the same name. The reason you want them to have the same name attribute is that way you can only select one. If you select one, you cannot then select the other because they have the same name. However, whenever our person goes to actually submit the form, notice they have different value attributes. These different value attributes are going to feed the form information onto the other side where our action is at. It's actually going to feed it different information based on whatever the person selected. So in this case, we have our label, we have our input element, our ID, our type, name, value. Checked means it starts out checked. You could have this on your indoor or outdoor. And then we have what is actually displayed here. So if I put endured and then I ran it again, we would get endured, but just that way you can see the output there. Let's run it back to the original. Now, what do we have next? We have another field set that can be checks. So we have a field set here. We closed out our original one, opened a new one, wrote another legend. What is your cat's personality? Now we have 3 options, but this time we selected checkboxes. So they can decide their cat is loving, lazy, and energetic. If, whenever your cat decides to get manic here and there. We use the type checkbox. Same above, we use the type radio. Now we use the type checkbox. We made sure to give them all the same names, but because these are not radios, selecting one or the other does not make a big difference there. But the values, once again, we want different values, so that way it's pushed as data on the other end to be different. Now, last things last is going to be our footer for the page. What the footer is, this always goes right down at the bottom. This is where you're going to put any copyrights, links, footnotes, things like that. In this case, we have footer, no copyright by FreeCodeCamp. Thanks to them. And that's basically the basics of this very first project that I made here. So I hope all of you guys enjoyed this.